teenager, I would always come home every day from high school, sit down on the TV, and turn on my favorite guilty pleasure, the TLC show. Now, I was absolutely obsessed with trashy reality TV as a teenager, and to be completely honest, not much else has changed. I immediately fell in love with the connections of 90 Day Fiancé, and I would sit for hours and watch the absolute craziness of the show. But my favorite of all the TLC shows I would watch was Say Yes to the Dress. Now, this was a little odd for me, seeing as growing up, when everyone would talk about having a boyfriend or girlfriend or wanting to get married one day, none of that ever really interested me. I was more focused on my studies and my career and my health and friendships, and having a romantic relationship just never really bothered or interested me as much as it did my fellow girls and boys in my class. And as I would watch TLC and Say Yes to the Dress, and these women who cried over added sleeves and sequin belts and absolutely yearning for the perfect dress to wear on their best day, all I could think of was having this beautiful dress and having everyone's eyes on me. I couldn't imagine a partner waiting for me at the end of the aisle, and I couldn't imagine the marriage that came afterwards. I didn't care about it. I cared about the event. I cared about the dress. I cared about feeling pretty. And I soon started to wonder, what was wrong with me? If everyone else in Appalachia felt this way, then why didn't I? This didn't change as I started growing up and third-wheeling my friends on dates or going on bad dates myself and feeling uninterested. And even as I got older, all the questions started turning on to me of, when are you going to get married, Megan? Or when are you going to have children and settle down? And meanwhile, I was focused on my career and going to college, and not once was I asked about any of that, but all about my relationships romantically. I started to yearn and crave to have other women who felt just like me, to see that I wasn't as alone in this state as I felt. Being in rural Appalachia, isolated from all the other places in the country, was already hard enough, but feeling like a leper in your own home, that was even worse. In graduate school, I then had the opportunity to seek out other women who felt like me and to do a study of rural Appalachian single women. So this led to me interviewing 17 different women and gathering their stories and experiences of being unmarried in rural Appalachia. Afterwards, I created composite characters from these interviews, and I then had 10 actresses act the parts, which you are about to see tonight. And I'm happy, beyond happy, to have created a play and created a piece where rural Appalachian single women can finally be heard. I hope you enjoy.
I made the conscious choice of being a single mother in my late 30s. I knew when I ordered the donor sperm that I was signing up to be a solo parent. I knew I wanted a child, so whether that happened inside or outside of a partnership did not change the course of that path. Being a single parent is not easy, nor is trying to form a romantic relationship with one. I knew when I said yes to that I would be saying no to something else. In all of my previous relationships, I felt like I was reliving the events of my childhood. I always dated losers, and it was a destructive cycle that I was intent on breaking. There was a lot of grief that came with conceiving the way I did. I had to make peace with that and become reconciled that this was the trajectory that my life was going to take. Sometimes I feel down in the dumps and isolated, and I'll talk to my therapist, and she reminds me that there are mothers who have partners that feel this way. I think it's a natural experience for mothers, and sometimes we all just get overwhelmed. I am the sole decision maker in my household, though. I can put all of my life force into raising my child. None of my energy has to go into a romantic relationship, and I think that is also why I chose to become a single mother. I mean, it would be nice to have two financial incomes, to have a larger financial base to work with, and getting household repairs is a nightmare as a single woman. I'm terrified of getting sick or something happening to me. But then again, I think there isn't a man I've dated that I would trust with my daughter anyway. Now that we are in a pandemic, my daughter sort of fell into a depression and wasn't playing as much because I cut down the people we saw and talked to. We haven't stepped into a grocery store since March. People would tell me, "You can't live like that and shut yourself off from the world." And I'm like, look, you're coming from this from a very different perspective with a two-parent household or maybe even being childless. It's just me here. I'm the one who cares for my daughter, and I cannot afford to get sick. It's made me go down this spiral of, oh, if you were married, you may feel less isolated. But I've dealt with those feelings before, and I know I can get through them. You know, women have been functioning as single since the very beginning of time. I've had people come up to me in Appalachia and say, "I get why you did it the way you did." My family was proud because they knew I wouldn't have to face a divorce or deal with a partner that wouldn't be there for me. I'm not anti-marriage nor anti-partnership, but I am anti-wrong marriage or partnership. And I think that can happen to a lot of women in Appalachia that face that kind of pressure.
Growing up, I never really felt queer. I always had boyfriends, and I was raised in a Christian household, so I never really questioned my sexuality or anything. When I was in high school, I moved to a larger city in Appalachia and started meeting all kinds of different people, and it really got me thinking on my values and who I was as a person. I was still Southern Baptist, so I tried to hold on to my beliefs. But when I got older, I met my current partner, and at first she and I were just friends, and then I thought, oh, this isn't how friendship works. And we've been together for 3 years now. Growing up in Appalachia, dating around was never really a thing. People always found someone they liked and then got married straight out of high school. So when I moved away from my hometown to go to college without being married, people gave me a really hard time for it. Then they started to joke, "I guess be glad you never left because there would be no one for you to date," and said I would have to wait for people to start getting divorces before I could move back. Like my whole world revolved around me being married. My grandmother always encouraged the opposite, though. When I was a teenager, she would always tell me, "I hope you're as fucking as many men as you can." She didn't quite fit the typical Appalachian woman role, and I loved her for that. She was married and dating at the same time. She had a lot of suitors. The rest of my family stopped asking me when I was getting married after a while because they knew I would give them the same answer every time. I grew up thinking, it's going to be hard for me to find someone I want to marry. And I never would marry any of the people I dated. I would marry my current partner, though. I would in a heartbeat. We can't get married, though, because her family doesn't know about us. Her family is really respected in her community, and she is as well. So she's terrified of what would happen if anyone found out. It sucks. It really sucks. It just feels like in Appalachia, the cultural narrative is you get married. Women get married. That's what they do. And yet, I know so many strong women in my family and in my community who have never been married and who love their lives. There are many of us out there, and we need to learn to connect with each other and support our common goals as single Appalachian women.